Welcome to the Roundhouse Report. Today we are going to be talking about World War I, Napoleonic style, full frontal charge tactics versus World War II tank-based maneuver warfare. Stark differences. This is going to be one of my, if not my most logistically challenging videos because I'm going to have to, I drew some crude, beautiful mine-esque maps. Then I'm going to need to to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to turn the camera around, put the thing on my belly, and then try to get it to focus in. We'll see. Okay, World War I trench warfare on the Western Front in France. You had Germany at this point was at the last holdout. Italy had switched sides. They were fighting the entirety of the English army, the French army, 2 million American troops, Italian troops at the end. Took all that plus more to bring Germany down in World War I. Similar thing in World War II. In World War I, the Germans tried to do breakthrough tactics because in World War I, it was a full frontal charge versus another full frontal charge. Think of videos or movies that you've seen that show reenactments of the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, and you know how they'll stand there and just shoot at each other. Those are called Napoleonic tactics. Charging into lines of guns. Those are Napoleonic tactics. Well, 1914, beginning of World War II or World War I rather, people still fought like that, except technology had advanced. Now there was widespread use of machine guns. Artillery had been perfected. Psychological warfare using said artillery had been perfected. You would be shelled for 10 days straight. You wouldn't be able to sleep, and then you'd be attacked. Gas, grenades, widespread use of grenades and air bursts to cause concussions and internal damage. And even Hitler didn't use gas in World War II. It's not very effective anyhow. But gas, and Hitler was a gas attack survivor. Grenades, artillery, machine guns. You charge into that, things aren't going to end well. First logistical challenge. Basically, you just see one side on a 25-mile front, from north to south, 25 miles, attacking across no man's land. And these guys, little X's there, that's where they all died. Because they were mowed down with machine guns. I believe it was the Battle of the Somme, the Second Battle of the Somme, perhaps, in World War I. The first 20 minutes, the British launched a massive attack, and within the first 20 minutes, they had suffered 20,000 casualties. Dead and wounded within 20 minutes of battle. You had 20 million plus dead in World War I, and you really had no lasting territorial gains. You would run across the field in a 25-mile wave against an entrenched enemy firing machine guns at you, hitting you with artillery. Then to make the connection, the Germans did. They were the first to start experimenting with penetration tactics, which would mean you don't meet the enemy head on, you break through their lines and get behind them and encircle them and attack their communications and their supply depots and things like that. Those were called stormtroopers. So Star Wars does not have a trademark on stormtroopers. That was a German thing. If you Google stormtroopers, you'll see what I'm talking about. Go to the Google images. The Germans had, the best of the German military would form into fire teams, attack squads called stormtroopers. And they would essentially try to, instead of doing a full frontal charge, they would kind of be the spearhead. And they would attack, and they would exploit a gap in the front line. Now, the map I just showed you is a 25-mile long front line. Let's say they exploit a 3-mile gap, just a little opening, just enough to pour troops through. Problem is, tanks, although introduced in World War I, had not been perfected by any means. They went about 4 miles an hour. So Germany couldn't exploit the gaps created by the stormtroopers. But frontline penetration tactics were introduced by Germany. Prussian-led Germany under the Kaiser during World War I. And these breakthrough frontal tactics, where you break through and get behind people, get behind, in the flank, and get through to people's rears. We still use that today. That's how we fight wars today. Most modern examples would be Desert Storm and Gulf War '03. Okay, now we're going to go to World War II. World War II, I made a little bit better. I use different colors and stuff. I'll hold it from up here. World War II, as you can see, the Germans massed tanks. And between World War I and World War II, the French had made the Maginot Line, which was hundreds of miles of long fortifications, bunkers. The French military high command, they were still fighting a defensive war. They were, as they say in the old adage, they were preparing for the last war instead of preparing for the future war. Whereas the Germans under Hitler and innovative generals like Manstein and Rommel, these were the new school. They had fought in World War I with distinction, and they kind of replaced the old school Prussian leadership. Hitler liked their new, albeit risky, very risky, they liked their new blitzkrieg tactics where you would mass tanks. So Germany prepared during the 1930s for the next war. France built the Maginot Line preparing for the last war, which was a static war. Static means you just stay there. Static, you don't move. So static bunkers, walls, static lines were all built. The Ardennes Forest is right near where France meets, like Belgium, Holland, Netherlands. The Ardennes Forest is a very thick patchwork of trees, forest. It's so thick that any thought of a breakthrough by the Germans through there was unthinkable to the French high command. It was an absurd idea. It would be like, hey, they're trying to cross the Himalayas. That's not going to work. So they did not build the Maginot Line there, but they did build it all the way up to Belgium and Holland and all that. Huge, huge lines of fortification. And as you can see here, didn't really work that well because instead of a frontal charge, the Germans, the black arrows, the Germans massed their tanks. Those are all tanks. And they blitzed across the field to capture, try to focus it, to capture the command and control of the French, their supply lines, to encircle their reserves, Dunkirk. I don't think it's focusing, is it? I think you get the idea. The Maginot Line, there, all in X's. Probably making you sick looking at all this. But I think you get the idea between wars of maneuver and wars of static defense. Tank-based maneuver warfare introduced by the Germans, perfected by the Americans. As best seen in conventional terms in the 1991 Gulf War and 2003 invasion of Iraq. I hope you guys aren't too sick. You can make some Phenergan in with your drink. Get to sleep that way. Alright, it's the latest installment of the Roundhouse Report. World War I, Napoleonic frontal charge tactics getting mauled up by machine guns versus quick, fast, rapid blitzkrieg, lightning war, tank-based maneuver tactics of World War II. And how the latter is far better than the former. And how the latter, the tank-based maneuver warfare tactics, are how we fight conventional wars to this day. Now, the next war is probably going to be in Asia, which means it's mostly going to be naval and aerial. I'll be making a video about that next. Alright, guys. The Roundhouse Report out.